One of the things I've learned whilst making this YouTube channel and interacting with you guys is that most of you are stuck in the stage of wanting to start a studio and make your own games, but not really knowing exactly how to do it. And I've been talking to a bunch of you guys that have been sending me emails and explaining how they should get started, but I figured that, I'll just make one video where I go through, this is my ideal setup. If you told me that I had to start over again, make a brand new studio, goodbye Bite Me Games, and I had 3 months, here's how I would do it to release my first game in that period. In this video, I'm gonna go through every basically week, what you should be focusing on in all the different stages to get you from zero to just, having an idea or having the dream of becoming a game developer to actually delivering a game. So let's get into it. Now, maybe a bit more explanation. Why 3 months? I think if you're going full-time, you should go for 3 months. Anything less and you'll end up with a game that, looks a bit like it was just made on a game jam and then slapped onto Steam for money. And usually people don't like that. Anything longer and you start getting diminishing returns based on how much time you put into the game versus what you actually get out of it. One mistake we did is we worked on our game for 18 months, which was way too long for the end result really. And you end up losing motivation about making your game. I'm also assuming that you're doing this 3 months full time. If you aren't doing this full time, if you're just doing this, trying to combine this with another job for now whilst you want to pay the bills, that's perfectly fine, but you'll probably need a little bit more than just double the estimates or something I have, depending on how much time you actually have. So we have a 1 step 0 first, and it is going to be determining how many people your studio is going to consist of. For example, we started with 4 people, 3 developers, and then me, who did everything else. But maybe you're a solo developer, or maybe one other person, or maybe you're a whole group of developers. I've interacted with all of them basically, and I just want to quickly give some thoughts on that. Being a solo developer is probably the most common. 2 is ideal. Really ideal would be if you have a developer and someone who's a bit more on the artsy side, and then you have a true powerhouse and you can make some really good games. 3 people is doable as well. You'll probably be able to add a bit of polish into one extra part of the game. 4 people is already pushing it a bit because then you're starting to get some management issues and keeping everyone up to date. And then anything over 5 people, you basically lose 1 person to just being a dedicated project manager at that point, and I would very much not suggest doing it. And now what I will say to everyone is, the next thing you should do is already start concepting on your game. But I know from experience, you don't want to do that. You're in the beginning, you're hyped, and you're gonna want to make oh, my logo should be beautiful. Oh, I need a website. I need to get fancy email addresses. And a lot of developers get stuck in this trap already of spending way too much time figuring out how should they get incorporated, or what logo they need, or which framework for JavaScript would they use for their fancy site. This is a waste of time in my opinion, but I've learned that even though I keep saying it's a waste of time, you keep wanting to do it, so get it over with quick. Take 1 day in the beginning when you're all pumped up, just get your name out there. Don't think too much about it. Our name was quite dumb. Thomas just came to us and he said our game studio should be called Bite Me. And we were sure, whatever, let's go with that. And here we are 18 months later. And don't really regret it. Your studio doesn't matter in the end. It's the games that you make that matter a lot more. Same goes with a website. You don't need a website. Just make a Twitter handle and that's fine enough. Make a YouTube channel if you want to do devlogs, but don't bother with a website when you're just starting out. First of all, you have no content to put on it. What are you gonna say? Oh, I'm going to be making games. But nobody cares that you're going to be making games. They care if you've already made games. If you really are no, I need a website, throw some money at it if you really want to. Again, this is very dumb, but for some reason you guys want to do it, and get some simple drag and drop website host, and don't waste any more time on it. This is a problem that we've also made multiple times, where sometimes we were just too busy with logos or names or websites for we need a new site for our game studio. Look to our site, it's horrible. I just link to our YouTube now instead of our actual website whenever there's a form that asks for a website URL. You have all of that out of the way, you've got your studio name, you got your fancy logo, perfect. Let's start actually making games. Now we get to our concepting phase. Here is where you're going to get your game idea. Here's what I'm gonna tell you. Don't reinvent the wheel. You've probably played plenty of games, and you probably have a favorite genre of game. Just go with that. Don't reinvent the wheel, improve upon it. What is something that you've got a lot of experience with a genre? Maybe you play a lot of shooters, but you want to add a twist to it, but you already know how shooters generally work mechanically. or you play a lot of like tabletop card games and you want to add some other elements to it, do this. It will save you a lot of time because you don't need to figure out every single mechanic, and it's also much easier for people to understand what your game is about. It's like, oh, it's like this game but with this. It's more than fine enough. Also, make sure that you aim for a commercial release for your game. What I mean with that is, at the end of like this 3 months, you want to release a game on Steam. I'm assuming Steam for like most of this. It costs between $2 to $5. Or if you're feeling a bit risky, you can also try the free-to-play with cosmetics model. It could earn you more. It could also like not earn you anything. So that one is up to you. I would suggest just going for regular pricing. Why do the pricing? Well, there's 2 reasons. First of all, you can make free games if you're just a game dev as a hobby, but you know, free is never going to get your studio off the ground. Same with like free with ads. Generally doesn't pay as much, and especially on something like Steam, it's not done at all. Second of all, this will also force you to think about stuff that you like that aren't really gameplay. So things like your main menu, being able to save and load games, or like tutorials. These are things that generally, if you just make like an itch.io game or you make a game jam game, you ignore all of that and you just start the game and it's straight into action. That's something that you can't do with a game that you're charging money for, and it's also a very important part of the process of learning to make games. Now, I have a little step 2.5. This one only applies really if you're a solo developer. This is where you're also going to incorporate your skills into your like actual concept. Are you someone who is much better at programming? Just use assets for basically everything, for your UI, for your characters, for your models, anything really. Don't try to draw it yourself, just go with assets. There's tons of free assets, and if you want, there's also some paid assets. There's actually an affiliate link down below if you want to help us a little bit out, thanks. But if you're a coder, your strength should be on implementing really cool mechanics. The opposite is also true. If you're someone who doesn't really know how to use like engines yet, and it's more of, you know, I have this art style or I have this concept and I can draw or I can model, but I don't know how to make it into a game, don't bother with learning a completely new engine like Unity. Stick to like the more easy stuff, such as either Game Maker Studio or something like Construct Tree. All right, we've got our concept. You've written it all out in like a document. You have a video about like game design document 1 page, or maybe you want something a bit more extensive where you describe all of the mechanics and the levels. Once you have that, it's time to go into our planning stage. This is really important. Don't just immediately, once you have the concept, fly into programming. Really look into how am I gonna make this game a reality. How you do this is by using a Kanban board. Don't know what a Kanban board is? Well, look up Trello. It's basically you have a board and you have different like issues or like little tickets. And in each ticket you put some tasks that you need to do. Maybe you need to add player movement to like controller support. Or maybe you need to add like some shader that will change the way your game looks, or maybe you just need to make some models. And then you have the columns like I'm doing this is priority, this is in progress, or this is done. And you drag the issues depending on where they are in the development process. And what I would suggest you put as your first issue on that board is to create your Steam page. By now, you should have spent about 1 to 2 weeks at most concepting and like planning out what your game idea is gonna be, and you're getting ready to actually start programming next week. Start with a Steam page already. You probably have some concept art, you have your name or anything really. Make the Steam page already. It helps a lot because from the moment you have a Steam page, you can start collecting wish lists. And that's something that we'll get back to in a little bit. It's gonna be a big part of our marketing and making the game a success. Now, we've got our game idea. We know how we're gonna get started on it because we've planned it all out. Now is the time that we actually start working on it. Ideally from week 3 to like 9 or 10 of our 3 months, you wanna start making the game. Whether it is through Unity or whether it's through maybe a Game Maker Studio, like I said, depending on who you are and what your skills are, work on it. Make your models, implement your mechanics, create your levels, things like that. And ideally you wanna keep weeks 9, 10, and 11 free of new features. So there it's just bug fixing. Of course, maybe you still need some time, but try to finish all of your main mechanics in the first 7 weeks of programming, so that you just have time to iron things out and to make sure that it's just that little bit more polished, like code-wise, it's not as clunky. Maybe there's like some animations here and there, but no new features. Don't make the mistake we did. Don't commit updates to like big mechanics like 2 weeks before release. It's gonna bite you. It bit me, pun intended. I'm so sorry. Just keep them free. You're gonna need them probably for bug fixing. Now, this next step is gonna take place during the programming as well. And that is Playtesting. Every 2 to 3 days, dedicate half an hour. Either you or everyone on your team should go and play what you've made so far. There's some vital feedback in learning what's actually good and bad about your game, and start doing this from probably week 4. Then once you've reached like week 6, I think, and you have a bit more of a product that you can show already by then normally, go and contact your friends who are maybe also gamers but not game developers, ask them for their feedback, ask your mom for feedback. I don't care, get feedback about your game and start incorporating that as well. Try to get the external feedback once a week, once you've like pushed a bunch of updates and like added new features and such. Now, you can make an awesome game that people say is awesome, but if nobody knows it exists, well, there's not really a point in making it. So that's also where marketing comes in. As I said, your first issue that you should do is get that Steam page up and running to collect wish lists. And you probably won't have much pictures by then, but you can update that throughout the development process. Once you've started your external playtesting as well, start sharing stuff on like the indie game subreddits. Make some cool little clips of what you're working on to get that initial ball rolling, and it's also an extra point of feedback. Maybe people don't like the shader you're using, or maybe they don't really understand what the game is about. That's invaluable feedback as well to improve your game. Then once, most of your development is done, so somewhere in like week 10, start making all of your like full-on marketing material. So make a trailer, don't make it complicated, just like record some gameplay and stitch it all together so you show off most of the game. Start making things like a press kit as well, or maybe you want to give your store page that one final like look over and make it just a bit more up to date. Add the trailer, for example, to the Steam page as well. And do this in week 10. Then once that's done, start looking for YouTubers or other like TikTokers, I don't care, whatever platform you use. If you spend a lot of time like watching Twitch, use Twitch. Use the platform that you're most comfortable with and reach out to people who play similar games to yours. Reach out with a, hey, hello, I've been working on this game, it's gonna be releasing soon. Here's a key if you want to give it a go. Don't expect many or any of them to really respond, but if they do, it's also once again going to be great marketing. And then one last thing is that during the 3 months since you've started basically, look online for local game dev meetups. I don't care how shy you are, I want you to go out to them and bring a laptop with like something playable ideally, and people are always willing to give feedback and tell you more, or maybe you can learn some new programming concepts and things like that. It's gonna be worth it to getting your game spread out more and just getting better marketing. And then it's almost over already. Ideally, your last week, so week 12, you wanna be free. No work really. It's gonna sound really weird, but your game should be done by then. This last week is just there as a buffer, just to polish things up. Probably things will go wrong. Maybe there's like some last minute bugs that appear, but you don't really want to have to spend that much time anymore. It's just 1 week of counting down to pressing that release button and hoping that people buy your game. Once you do press that button, take a break. Go and like climb some mountains with no internet. I think that's the best thing. We just kept refreshing like every time and oh, we got a new sale. Oh, we got a new sale. Oh, we haven't really gotten any sales in the last hour. This sucks. This is horrible for you. Just go out and do something good with your life. Get your phone away, get away from internet and just take a break after you've been probably grinding quite hard for the last 3 months. Then once the release is a bit more over and it has settled down a bit, it's very important to do what I call a post-mortem. Both of your game and also maybe of your studio and how you work. What this means is you sit down with you, and if you have other teammates, you sit down all together and you look back at what have we accomplished, first of all, and where did we go wrong, what did we do good. Basically, you become an outsider looking at the whole development process and trying to objectively state this is what we did well, this is what we can improve, and this is what we should never do again. Maybe you had some horrible crunch because of a mistake you made somewhere in the beginning with your planning. You learn from these things. Your first game probably isn't going to be a great commercial success, but it should be a great learning experience to make sure that your next games are that successful. If your first game is a success, I mean, that's great, but I wouldn't go in with this like 3-month program expecting it to be a success. Then once you've done that, and if you think, hey, I want to continue with this game dev stuff, just keep going. Do this process again, maybe you can get a bigger scope now, but you should have learned a lot from this whole process. Releasing games is the most important thing, and you'll also have accomplished more than like 90% of the wannabe game developers who always just dream about making their game but just are stuck on like 10 different prototypes and never really finishing anything. So you should be proud of yourself. So this is what I generally give as advice to other people that are planning on starting a studio. Don't spend too much time on it is my main takeaway. There's diminishing results in doing this too long, and just do it. Just get started and make that game. Get some feedback along the way, that's also important, but just keep doing it. Anyways, that's all I really had to say. If you're new here, we're a game development studio. We've released our first game. We've learned a lot of stuff from that. And we also make videos about all of the things we've learned. So for example, you have this where I talk more about general game development strategy maybe and the business behind it. We also talk about our experiences of like making our own game, like how we got pirated before we even released. Or when we go to conferences, for example, like Gamescom, we also go ahead and provide some vlog footage of us being there. We upload 2 videos a week, so if that's something that sounds interesting to you, be sure to give us a like and also maybe subscribe down below, as it's a win-win for both of us. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!